So hello, my name's Rob and this is Cattle Rabbit Scale Model Studios, and in this week's video we're going to be taking a look at the brand new edition of Warhammer Underworlds Embergard. This is the core box set kindly sent to me by Games Workshop to show off to my community, and there is a lot to go through. This is a clean slate for Underworlds after I think 6 years and 12 boxes prior to this, so there is a lot to go through here and unpack. So without further ado, let's just jump in and begin. So before I begin, don't forget to like and subscribe if you thought this was informative or give you some food for thought. I do like to be constructive with these types of unboxings, and this one is obviously going to be no different. One thing I do like to do is start with the artwork. Now, as you can see here, we've got the new Warhammer Underworlds logo, the weird name Embergard without the U, which, you know, Games Workshop have a penchant for making their own words up. I can't help but call this one Warhammer. And then down here, we've kind of got this artwork. It's neither cartoony nor realistic. And to me, I don't think I've ever really, this art style has been for me. It always feels like one of those boxes that become exclusive for Walmart, almost, I don't want to say amateurish, but it seems of lesser quality than we see in things like Scaventide. That rulebook had some lovely artwork, so it's a shame that they didn't kind of redo the artwork and they kept with, you know, this more cartoony style. But I guess it's quite fitting for the box set itself. If you flip it over, you'll see that you get a fair old bit in here. You get your game board, which is double-sided. You get your 2 warbands, which is the Skaven versus the Stormcast. You get a load of art cards. You get tokens, dice, everything you need as a starter set. It is in here. Now, one thing I will say, this goes for about £75 from Games Workshop, and it's stripped right back to kind of almost be effectively a refresh of where Shadespire was, which was only £40. So, you know, price is going to be really subjective here for you guys. If you think that's worth it, it's worth it. Personally, I think it's a little bit on the wrong side of expensive for my liking. Opening up, and you see you've got the full edition of the artwork here. Again, it's got that kind of cartoony, half realism, half style. If you like it, brilliant. It's just not for me. Although I do think it does suit, you know, the more I look at it, Underworlds quite well with, you know, how it you know, it's supposed to be a quick, fast-paced game. I don't think Games Workshop ever expected Underworlds to be as big as it was. So there's that. The miniatures themselves are lovely. I've actually painted up all of the Skaven, and I must say they go together really, really well. As you can see, the Skaven are on green plastic here. The detail, always good from Games Workshop. There's no doubt about that. Their miniatures are absolutely fantastic. I do find the Skaven are a bit more interesting than the Stormcast, which you can now see here in the blue plastic. Again, great if you're a beginner or you're just getting into Underworlds. I do find though, with the amount of core boxes we've had 9 core boxes in 6 years, and 6 of those have had Stormcast in. They do just feel a little bit white on beige at the moment. I can't really tell these guys apart from the last couple of entries we've had for Stormcast, which is a bit of a shame. I would have liked to have seen something maybe a little bit different and unique in there. Inside, you kind of get this little cardboard sleeve that houses your miniatures and things like that. And you do get dice in there. Now, I haven't really played properly since Nightvolt, and there are no magic dice. I know there are magic dice in Nightvolt that aren't in here, so you can tell it's gone right back to Shadespire. You know, I know a lot of things have changed. I've struggled over the years to keep up with Underworlds, I'm not going to lie. So I was really interested in how they've kind of redone this box set. As you can see, we've got these lovely folders. You get this in Kill Team. I'm a big fan of this, presentation-wise, top-notch. And if you wanted a backdrop for your miniatures, you've kind of got this lovely cracked jade green kind of gloss finish that I would probably use as a backdrop. I think it's, you know, it's presented very, very nicely. You do get a rules instruction sheet, sorry, do beg pardon, which again is in full colour, so you can clearly see, you know, what your Stormcast are and what your Skaven are. Skaven are a touch smaller than the Stormcast, and there are a few little tiny fiddly bits, but as you can see, there's not much to them. they go together really, really nicely. I didn't have to trim any of the pins. You know, I do think their push fit is getting better and better. Games Workshop as they kind of go on. It's just nice to have coloured plastic, nice to have it ready from the word go. You don't even have to paint your miniatures. You can just play with coloured plastic and know which ones they are. Now, rules side of things, I know rules have been very bloated with Underworlds lately. I think the last edition, rules were about 50 pages. This is a quick start guide, but it's not a reference sheet or quick rules sheet. It plays out as if you were following a set pattern. So it's almost like if you made this move, this would happen, this happens, and you follow it along. It's a bit of a weird inclusion, this sheet, because there's actually little cards with quick rules on in there, so it's a bit odd. I did try and follow this, although I didn't have much I would have actually left this sheet out. I think it's a touch pointless. This is where my gripes with Underworld, I think, really start to show. You've got this lovely magazine-like rulebook, and look at the artwork that we've got there. Now, I know a lot of the books have had this style of, you know, ever since Shadespire and Nightvolt have had these cool little icons. I would actually much prefer this to be the artwork of the box set than what, you know, the cartoony style that we got. And it's a shame they couldn't only lean in a bit more to that darker aesthetic that a lot of the miniatures, especially the new Stormcast range, has been, you know, going. Rules sit at about 20 pages, which is great. Shadespire was about 15 originally, and you'll hear me keep referencing Shadespire because, you know, this is the fresh start, going back to, you know, the simplicity of Shadespire when it first took off. Now, I do find that as additions, and this might be a little bit controversial to people, and it is a subjective opinion, so don't get your knickers in a twist in the chat and start being absolutely, you know, just vile humans to each other. I do find that as Underworld has matured as a game, it's suffered a bit of an identity crisis. Originally marketed as a 30-minute coffee table game, it's now become quite an avid tournament game. And the problem is the rules are bloated to kind of cater for both sides of that. It's neither one nor the other, and I don't think it can go back to being either one because of the amount of time, one, people have invested in it and money, but also, you know, how popular it is as the other. So Underworld sits in a really, really odd place. I can appreciate that they have revamped the rules completely. However, I would have redesigned this game from the ground up. One thing I do want to talk about, and I will talk about much later, you know, as nice as these books are and things like that, I do feel that there were probably ways to kind of keep the cards and the amount of, you know, hard-earned cash that people have spent on previous editions and make it usable. I do think that is something that I do want to talk about. You do get these little ability cards. At first I thought, oh, that's a bit odd because, you know, where are the wounds and stuff like that. You also get individual fighter cards like you normally would, which is nice. It's a nice thing to have. Isn't, you know, something else to have on the table. But it does seem a little bit odd that why wouldn't you just put them on the fighter cards and have this extra, almost like the ability side of your warbands that you see in Warcry. So, you know, it just seems a bit odd. You get one for your Skaven, one for your Stormcast. I would have liked to have maybe seen a bit of a thicker cardboard so you could have pushed your wound tokens into it, and each, you know, almost like a little tracker, I think would have been quite nice. It's a shame they didn't do that. The tokens, again, good. I'm not, as I've got older in my wargaming kind of years, I hate tokens everywhere. They get knocked, they get moved around. It's hard to follow, especially when you're playing with maybe younger kids and stuff like that. The artwork on them is lovely and is very kind of reminiscent of what we've seen already with like the glory points and, you know, stuff like that. It's just a shame that they didn't kind of have maybe like a little tracker for each warband that you just pushed your wounds into, you know, little indentations that were cut out. You know, I don't know how viable that would have been, but it's a shame they didn't do something like that. Again, I think they kind of missed a little trick there with that one. Then we move over to the game board. Obviously, again, the game board is a new thing. I've actually got a fair share of game boards for Underworlds that I actually never used. The board design really doesn't bother me in the slightest. It is double-sided. You get one absolutely open space, and then you get one with some hazards. You get one with some obstacles on, as you can see here, and things like that, where you're supposed to put your traps and tokens and stuff like that. It's nice. It's got a nice print to it. It's a nice clear image. It's just a game board. I never really looked too much into it. You know, people playing lengthways with the original boards and stuff like that. So it's just very nicely presented. Now, the cards themselves, and you know what I touched on a little bit earlier. So you can see that you've still got your fighter cards here for your individual kind of characters, and we no longer have artwork. We have pictures of photographed miniatures. This is fine, but the problem then arises is when it's an item that's being used that doesn't have, you know, maybe like a model to represent it. You kind of get, I'll put like 2 examples up on screen now, like the blood vial from the Crimson Court, and then you've kind of got this one here, and it's kind of like odd, dare I say, badly photoshopped. I do think they've missed out by having the artwork kept. I would have liked to have seen cards being kept. I don't think they should have touched the cards, if I'm completely honest with you, because it voided large portions of people's, you know, hard-earned, you know, cash, and you know what I'm trying to say here. I just think there were probably better ways of doing it rather than nulling and voiding absolutely everything and still making it usable. You get a few decks. You get your decks for your warbands, and then you get your universal decks with stuff that you can kind of mix and match. There are some little rules cards that I think I've already shown them on screen, so do beg your pardon there. That are nice. You could have them out on the table as a quick reference kind of guide, and you know, the backs are nicely presented, the cards are nicely presented. You know, Games Workshop is nice on presentation. It's just a shame that the cards are, you know, it costs so many people, you know, so much that they've already invested in to not be able to use it. So I think there's some points that go against the new Underworlds. For as good as this box set is, if you're picking it up for the first time, I guess things that I would maybe have liked to have seen, I think the price is a little bit, I guess, the wrong side of £60 for my liking. I do think that it's pulled in 2 different directions to cater for the tournament scene and the casual gamer, and it's neither one nor the other, and I think it suffers from a little bit of an identity crisis. But then I do think Underworlds in, you know, the last few years has suffered from that in general. I would have liked to have seen, you know, something different instead of Stormcast. It's very safe. If they're very recognisable, they are the poster boys of Age of Sigmar. I completely understand that. However, every time you see them doing something a little bit different, they then take that step back. And then obviously the cards are a bit of a point of, I know a lot of people are upset about them, and I do think rightly so, from a consumer point of view. For people that have invested in all these additional decks and warbands to get the cards to be on a level playing field as everyone else, it's a shame that they weren't kept. I don't know why Games Workshop don't do little booster packs. Originally, I think they said it's because they didn't want someone to have an advantage over someone else by getting a card. But then if you didn't buy a certain warband and have them cards anyway, you would still be at a disadvantage. So I think, you know, maybe a more casual approach to the deck building would have been a bit nicer. Yeah, or you could have just paid to buy them in bulk. People sometimes like the little thrill of unboxing a little pack of cards. You know, it's something that why trading cards appeal to so many. So that's kind of Shadespire. I always ask this question: if Games Workshop hadn't sent this to me, would I have purchased it for myself? And I would not have in this instance. However, I would have bought the Skaven Warband separately. I actually painted all these guys up. I had an absolute blast with this warband. They were so much fun. One thing Underworld always gets really, really right is their warbands. Whether you like them or not, you know, taste is very subjective. Hey, I didn't think much of the Stormcast warband in this one. However, that's not to say someone else won't. So just remember these points are subjective. If you're excited for this, I honestly do hope you have a fantastic time with it. As for a reboot of Underworld, I do think unfortunately this probably won't entice me to play any more than I have done, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years. But I can appreciate this is a very solid box set. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you're going to pick this up. I can appreciate that I've been rambling quite a bit in this one. It might seem negative. It's not. It's subjective. Do just remember that. If you like it, you like it. that's, you know, that's the beauty of the hobby. But that's it from me in this one. I'll see you all next time. God bless and take care.